Well, good morning. I'm really excited to introduce this morning's speaker. As some of you know, my husband and I are huge foodies and we love to cook, but more importantly, we really love to eat and find new places to eat. So we discovered the Cheneaux Culinary School and Restaurant located in Hessel, Michigan, which is approximately about 25 minutes east of St. Ignace. We discovered it about 5 years ago during its second season, I believe, and it's quickly become one of our favorite summer spots to dine. It's only open during the summer months, so we make sure to make reservations there 3 to 4 times a year. It's located right on the waterfront of Lake Huron. And actually one of our favorite things to do when we go up there is to drive up on a sunny evening, grab a cocktail from the bar at the restaurant, and then go sit along the water for a while. You watch all the fishing boats, start to come in and everything. And then we go back and enjoy our dinner at the restaurant. So I've actually found that this culinary school and restaurant is actually a hidden little secret in this particular area in Petoskey and Harbor Springs, because there are very few people that I ever talk to that are even familiar with it. So I was really excited that Zach got up early and agreed to talk to our club this morning about how this culinary program came about and what he's done to expand it over the years. So Zach Schroeder is the director and instructor of the culinary arts at the Cheneaux Culinary School and Restaurant. He's a professional chef with an extensive management and leadership background. He's a native of Michigan's Eastern UP and attended the Great Lakes Culinary Institute. He also received his Bachelor of Science degree in Hospitality Management at the Northern Michigan University in Marquette, Michigan. And he has worked as a line and prep cook at Hannah's Bistro and then at the Red Ginger Restaurant in Traverse City, Michigan, and at Mackinac Island's Grand Hotel. And then he was at Upfront and Company in Marquette, and then also a sous chef at Bayside Fine Dining on Drummond Island. And then he became executive chef and general manager at H2O in Battle Creek, and then executive chef and food and beverage director at Moose Ridge in South Lyon, Michigan, before starting this culinary school and restaurant. So Zach, thank you, welcome, and take it away.
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to share my screen here. I've got a little bit of a slideshow for you guys. Ahead of time, I'm going to apologize because this whole thing has been in and out for me. I have Uper internet here, so hopefully it holds on enough for you guys to get some of this. But anyways, I will keep plugging away here, and it should be about 10 minutes, and then I will do my favorite part, which is the question and answer segment. All right, so as she said, I'm Zach Schroeder. I'm the director of the culinary school up here in Hessel, which is part of the beautiful Cheneaux Islands. And yeah, we've been around since 2014 was our first class. So this is our 7th year of operating as a culinary school up here in the rural UP. It started before I joined though. So I'll give you first a little background about the school, a little history. So try to stay with my notes here, but it's behind the Zoom. All right, here we go. Sometime after the development of the Great Lakes Boat Building School, which I'm sure some of you have heard about, which is in Cedarville, which is practically, if you've been up here, the same town as Hessel. It's about 2 miles away. And altogether, we're considered the Cheneaux Islands. We'll talk about that in 1 second. A group of individuals decided they wanted to open a restaurant in this area, but with only the tourist season being 3 months, they didn't figure they'd be able to hire a chef or make a profit or be able to operate year-round. And so one of the founders of the boat school came up with the idea, why don't we just start a school that operates for 9 months as a school when the tourists are not here, and then that same school will open as a internship facility / restaurant for summer residents and tourists alike for the public. And it was a great idea. And somehow they found out about me. I was living in Detroit at the time, or outside of Detroit at the time, and took the opportunity to move up here and help design the school. And that was in early 2014 when I joined. And then we spent the spring and summer recruiting students for our school, as well as constructing our building, which sits here on Hessel Bay. which is part of Lake Huron. Out in front of us here, if you do not know, the Lake Cheneaux Islands have, it's debated, but around 30 islands out in front of us that are mostly privately owned by summer residents. And so similar to the Petoskey Harbor Springs area, I'm sure, is a lot of individuals that are only here for 3 to 5 months a year, we'll say. And those are primarily the individuals that started the school. We do have a few year-round residents that are still on our board, but it's mostly those summer residents that make up our board and our committees. So covered that part. Yeah, in 2013. Yeah, and then a couple names there: Henry Mass Jr. And Bonnie Mickelson were the primary idea creators of this facility. They hired me. Yeah, and then so the next part here, we built, let me see if how do I switch slides? Hold on. There we go. We built a 5,000 square foot facility, which is a hybrid school / restaurant. And you can see here, we seat about 75 people in our restaurant, which is about half patio, half indoor dining, as well as an indoor-outdoor bar. Our bar has 2 sides to it. One side, which is faces the water and is inside the building, and the other side, which is from the patio that goes inwards. And then in the winter months, this dining area becomes our classroom. And so actually currently Lake State is setting it up to be a Zoom room, which is going to be pretty cool. We're going to have everything needed, everything that the universities are having these days for Zoom classroom activities. And then we have a state-of-the-art kitchen facility in the back, which is our laboratory in the winter. And we operate just as any other culinary school and try to cover all the bases there. All right, next. A couple things that differentiate us from other culinary programs is that we are a 1-year program. Most culinary arts certificate programs, including all the other ones that I know of in the state, are 2 years. And so what we did rather is make it a little more intensive, a few more days a week, a little bit more hands-on, a little bit less book activity, and try to get it in and out in 1 year. And the reason for that is, 1, to be different, and 2, to keep costs minimal. It's hard for business owners to hire recent graduates of culinary programs when they have this high amount of student debt to pay back and require high pay in our industry. And so we wanted to keep student debt to a minimum and get students in and out and get them into the workforce. And so that was one of our primary goals, and that's what differentiates us. Another thing here is we have a lot of beautiful local farms, and really we source from farmers all around the state, but particularly in the Eastern Upper Peninsula. And we do have some down in your neck of the woods, which would be the Bliss area down there, as well as kind of that surrounding area. But that's another thing that we do different than other culinary schools, is we focus on buying from local purveyors and farmers. And we also educate the students on how to do that properly and in a profitable fashion. So yeah, and then one other little side note is we do a certificate in wild mushrooms and edibles, so the students can come out and we pick and harvest wild mushrooms and wild plants seasonally. Let's see. Okay, about our program. So a few years ago, all right, so in 2014, the program began, our 1-year program started, and it went fairly regular for 5 years. We did seek federal accreditation. So at one point, we decided we wanted to become accredited so that we could accept federal financial aid for our students, as well as get grant money and scholarships through third parties and things like that. So we sought out federal financial aid or federal accreditation, and it did not quite go as we planned. There's a lot of hoops and hurdles to go through, and so we eventually ended up seeking a partnership with Lake Superior State University. And so I think it was about 3 years ago now in June, we joined up with Lake Superior State University and have been a branch of their university since. And that new program ended up becoming a 32 credit program through Lake Superior State University. and covered things like beginning culinary skills, advanced culinary skills, food and beverage management, safety and sanitation, service operations, nutrition, all those sorts of things, all the regular things that you'd see in a certificate or in a certificate program through for culinary arts. One thing that makes us different too here is our in-house internship. So most culinary schools would outsource their internships to local restaurants or even regional restaurants. But we do all of our internships to date paid in-house, and we'll run our restaurant for 3 months a year. All right. Yeah, and so another couple of things. Our school operates from September to May, and the students meet Monday through Thursday, 8 to 4. They usually come in, we spend about 50 minutes in the classroom discussing either the subject of the day or other subjects, and then we break and head into the kitchen and prepare ourselves lunch or other things, as well as we do off-season events. We'll do 6 events throughout the winter and spring and fall. And yeah, and then when May rolls around, the students finish the program up and start their internship. All right, some of the challenges we had and why we became a part of Lake State. Accreditation, I think I mentioned a lot of these. Lack of federal student aid, recruiting power. So Lake State has done another thing for us, which is gain a lot of recruiting resources for us. And then it's also nice to be a part of a bigger learning system and also having that are educators. Here's some of the things that we've been featured on. Under the Radar Michigan, I'm sure some of you have maybe seen that. We were featured on an episode of that. We have a lot of successful graduates, including some in the Harbor Springs area. One of our graduates in that area works, is I think the sous chef, or maybe even in charge of Carol Costello Catering. His name is Sean Hammond, among other graduates that have gone out there. We also have a graduate that I believe runs Pour Kitchen and Bar, or she's the sous chef of Pour Kitchen and Bar in Petoskey. So there's that. All right. That's all I have. And also, more recently, we just opened our 7th summer restaurant season. We're open Wednesday through Sunday for dinner, and then we're also open for Sunday brunch. And so tomorrow will be the beginning of our 2nd week of the restaurant, and that'll operate all the way until Labor Day. Any questions?
Zach, I have a question.
Sure.
How, as far as staffing for the summer and all that, is that Wednesday through Sunday your typical operating hours, or is that a shift for this year?
Well, we operate in a typical fashion of a from scratch restaurant. Now everything we make is from scratch. And you'll often see those style restaurants being closed 1 to 2 days a week, just to be able to keep up with production. We need to do that. And yeah, so staffing was difficult this year, as I'm sure all of you have heard about every restaurant from here as far as ways you can imagine. And what we did is we had a lot of meetings this spring, and we decided we were going to increase our pay. And we increased our pay by upwards of 35% for all staff members, and that helped. We're at the max staff that we could imagine having. So.
Wow.
I have a couple questions for you, Zach.
Excellent.
Number one, how many graduates do you typically have each year?
Yeah, so I think we average 8. We've had all the way up to 12, and we've had as minimal as 5, but we average 8. And that's one thing that one of the main reasons we joined Lake Superior State is just to get that recruiting power out there. It just so happened as soon as we joined Lake State, the COVID thing came about, and so we've stayed par through that, and now we anticipate some growth.
And how many can you handle in a class? Like, what's your max?
Well, we've had a lot of discussions of that. Now we haven't put it to practice, but we think if we could stick to a 1 class outline, which would be about 20. And then we could always go to like an AM and a PM class, and then go upwards of 40. But we would need to hire more instructors at that point.
Great. And then do all your graduates actually work in the restaurant in the summer? Is that a requirement, or can they do internships somewhere else?
To date, we've hired them all. Now, we did have a few, and there's a name for this. This is a I think it's called a non-vocational student, meaning that they are not going to culinary school to seek a betterment of their career. And so they have the option to skip. For example, if you're retired and you just want to learn to cook, and you don't want to work in a restaurant, you can, of course, come to our culinary school and then opt out of the internship. We've had 2 of those, I think, maybe 3, and they could do that. But to date, we've hired all interns in-house. Now, there have been talks, if we get up to 20 or 30 students, would we be able to facilitate them all in our facility? And I think we could. We currently have 35 staff members on hand, and that could eventually turn into all students, with the exception of myself and other instructors. There's also been talks of potentially doing a cycle with certain hotels or other restaurants on Mackinac Island, where they cycle through there and then come back here and finish their internship.
Great. It sounds like a great program.
Hey, thank you very much.
Zach, how many of your students come from out of Hessel?
I would say 9 out of 10. I think every year we maybe have one, and every year it's become less. So the first year was probably half of our students came from Hessel. And as word of mouth has spread and we've kind of saturated the student pool of Hessel, they've come from farther and farther away. And we've recruited students from all over the country, some from Texas. We have one from Washington State right now. Some from Ohio, a lot from Ohio, because a lot of our summer residents stem from Ohio. But Southeast Michigan is probably our #1 recruiting pool, the Detroit area. You find students that are trying to get out of the city. What's that?
How do you house them?
Good question. That is also one of our biggest obstacles. But luckily to date, between the boat school and us, we've pretty much occupied every local rental. And we've made sure that we keep our students rotating through there to make sure those are available for our students. But Lake State would also house them in the dorms if there was an overflow and we couldn't house them locally, which we may be preparing to do this fall. And in that case, they would run a shuttle, which is about 30 minutes from Sault Ste. Marie down to here. So they'd run a shuttle twice a day from the Sioux down.
Thanks.
I sailed to Hessel last year from Sheboygan, and it is a gorgeous facility you have there. It is such a cool program. Really, really enjoyed it. So I was really excited that you were going to be here. Have there ever been discussions of kind of taking this program and potentially like also creating it elsewhere too within Northern Michigan?
Yes. In fact, when I first joined the team back in 2013, that was part of the business plan, was to, rather than expanding this business, was to replicate this business around other rural communities around the country and maybe even Northern Michigan. Potential for that, definitely.
Cool.
Boy, Zach, you must have really changed the dynamic of the young population in Hessel. I bet you're creating
Sure.
an army of chefs out of that town.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal.
That's
You know,
wonderful.
one interesting thing to me about that was when I first started here, hiring our service staff. It was interesting because many of we were hiring mostly 18 to 22-year-old returning from college for the summer type individuals to run our service staff, and a lot of them had never ate at a restaurant that had cloth linens
Right,
before. And so there was a teaching curve there that I
Yeah.
think we're kind of surpassing, and a lot of these students are are starting to understand what it's like to eat at a higher end facility.
That is amazing. I have to tell you that I took a career hiatus when I was age 30 and I went, 40, and I went full-time to l'Académie de Cuisine outside of Washington, DC. And I also did not participate in the job afterwards. I just took the 6-month intensive. So it was really great. And my goal was to own restaurants at that time. And who knows, maybe someday I will.
There you go.
Zach, I think I saw a social media post last week that you were expanding with the program to start doing some private catering with the students and even host some off-site culinary classes. Is that for this year, or what does that look like?
Well, during the time that we were seeking federal accreditation, I was not allowed to do short-term classes. So when we first started the whole thing, we wanted to do a lot of like one-day classes or weekend-long classes. But when we started seeking federal accreditation, they would not allow us to do any classes outside of our accredited program. And then joining Lake State, which is a regionally accredited facility or operation, we were then allowed to do that. And so I'm starting to do personalized classes, and I've done a few of them now just for locals as well as just groups and things like that. That kind of coincides with our catering department. So we have a department where our caterers will go to your facility or to parks or whatever and cater just like any other catering operation. But we'll also like make it fun and do it as a like an educational type thing. That's what we're all about.
Awesome.
Sure. Other questions?
Zach, what's going to be your #1 item this year on the menu? What's going to like fly off your culinary shelves, so to speak?
Well, one thing about our menu is it's always changing. And so my board always laughs because the one thing that we start selling a lot of, I'll rotate it out. But we do plan on doing this dish this summer called a whitefish roll, which is meant to be like a lobster roll, but with whitefish. And so far, so good. It's also our most fairly priced item, which is probably one of the reasons why it's selling so much. But yeah, so the whitefish roll, I'd have to say, is right up there with our best seller.
Wonderful. Sounds like we all need to take a trip.
There you go.
Thank you, Zach. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy, for that. Wonderful. All right.